Welcome guys to another Resto Designs video. In today's video we'll be covering the Mark IV Golf, my daily that's in Portugal, as well as my old track car, which as you saw in the thumbnail, it looks totally different to how it did when it was in its prime, and it's far from it now, unfortunately. So in today's video I'm going to run through a bit that I've sourced for my daily driver Wagon, which I'm nicknaming the Wagon Racer because I'm going to turn it into a little bit of a track daily car out of a wagon. I don't know how it's going to perform, but if it performs half as good as this, the Mark IV platform is very underrated, I think, especially for track cars. As standard, the car is horrid almost, handling wise. It understeers. It's not a great platform, but what it does have going for it is that you could put a whole load of mechanical grip. I mean, this had two 4.5s on the front and then two 2.5s on the back, so just in 18s and in 17s, so you could fit a really wide tire in this platform and get the mechanical grip. Then if you change the hubs and a few bits and pieces from the Audi TT or the S3 and kind of do some little tweaks to the suspension, it can really handle really well. And that showed up a lot of cars, you know, more powerful cars and supposedly better handling cars platform wise than this one. And also if you look back in history, well, not that far, but VW's actually most successful touring car platform was actually the Mark IV Golf. It was in the Seat Leon Super Cupras, you know, all over Europe, as well as the worldwide racing touring car championship. They were the cars to beat. It didn't matter where you went, South Africa to Europe, you know, it was a really successful car. I even remember reading one of the motorsport magazines at the time when the Leon 2 platform came out, which is the same as the Mark V platform, which was supposedly supposed to be a better platform. The cars, I remember when they first built the cars and they started, you know, putting times down, they were actually slower than the Mark IV platform cars. Don't ask me how or why, it is what it is. So they're quite underrated platforms. But anyway, back onto this. So in today's video, I'm going to finally get rid of this and take the bits off that I need or that I want for the Wagon back in Portugal, which are going to be the TT wishbones, the TT front hubs, as well as some of the rear suspension coilovers, as well as the front anti-roll bar and a few other little tricks, top mounts and all the rest of that stuff. And also I'm actually cutting off the chassis legs on this because the Vibertech, oh no, sorry, the Black Forest Industries engine mount and gearbox mount have actually gone to a Mark III project. Someone's going to be running a high-powered V6 engine and he wants to use the Mark IV stuff. So we've done a deal, and part of the deal was also to cut off the, you know, the engine bay, the chassis legs, so that he can actually then, you know, cut what he needs to graft onto a Mark III. You might see that in the distant future on the channel. Let's see how that works out. But anyway, back onto what I've done so far today. So yep, I've cut these bits because, like I said, for my mate who's doing the Mark III 800 horsepower V6, he needs these to mount the Mark IV style mounts on the engine. So I've cut these off for him, so they're almost ready. Done that. Unfortunately, I've had to cut my little boosted snare. But anyway, so yeah, so he's got these, so I can put this to one side. So now I'm going to tow the car round to where it's actually going to get picked up. I'm going to be taking off the rest of these bits. As you can see, it's got nice little camber and caster top mounts. The TT wishbones, unfortunately, are all rusty now. I've been sitting around for such a long time, and the hubs. And also some other little bits and pieces. It's got a Miltech exhaust system. I'm going to be ripping that off as well. The rear beam's got an anti-roll bar on it and a few bits. So I'm going to be selling what I don't need and what I can't take back to Portugal, and that's the Miltech. I'm not sure if you can see that. But anyway, it's ready now to be towed over to the other side, which will be its final resting place before it gets totally filled with scrap metal and taken away and crushed into a cube, which is a shame because it was actually a perfectly good shell. There was actually nothing wrong with it. I just couldn't get rid of it. So I finally got the car over at the graveyard barn, as I call it. This is where the car's come to die. If you've seen some of the other videos, also I had the silver Mark II here. This is also where I stripped down the 3.5. And as you can see, there's another one going. My old Mark IV, this is sad because there was nothing actually wrong with this at all. But anyway, so I've taken off the top mounts. As you can see, these camber adjustable top mounts. I've also taken off the steering wheel already. I'm gonna put some WD to try and loosen up, because obviously the car's been sitting for such a long time, the bolts and stuff, so I can take the wishbones off, the hubs, the coilovers, and the subframe. The only reason I want to drop the subframe is because at the back, I'll show you later on, I've got aluminium bushes at the back there. So this is as it stands now. I've also taken the rear beam off with the white line anti-roll bar that I had on here. As you can see, the drop links, I've also changed them. They're actually rose jointed instead of being just the little bushes that I was on them. And I've also taken off the Miltech exhaust system, which I'm going to put up on eBay. Surprisingly how good condition this is, and as you can see, it's a really big ball all the way through, doesn't shrink down anywhere. It's 2.5 all the way. I mean, Miltech do make some of the best exhausts, really. And this is how it's going to end, unfortunately. It's a shame. Also I've got to take off actually my Momo Boss. Alright guys, so as you can see, it's all stripped down and it's going to be going to the scrapyard. It's a shame, it was such a nice car. There was really no reason to strip it down. I did try to sell it. I tried to sell it, it was on sale for about 6 months. I didn't really ask a lot. I think I had it for about 5.5K. But all the bits that was on the car were worth way more than that. So the car was actually worth more to me in parts. I mean, I've already sold quite a lot off the car and kept a whole heap of stuff on the car that I'm still going to be using. So I've sold it for definitely, in a way, more than 5.5 because of bits I've sold and bits I'm going to keep off it and actually get the most usage out of it. Because I actually built this car and maybe only used it very, very little. I mean, I bought it with 82 on the clock, 82,000, and it stands at 89. And I bought the car in 2011 maybe, 2012. So I've had it like, 9 years and it's covered very little mileage. I mean, and in the condition it was in, with the bodywork all painted and the way it looked, it was like that for about 5 or 6 years. And I think I've used it maybe 1,000 miles in that time. So it had very little usage, spent quite a lot of money on this engine, and especially on the gearbox. But I'm happy that's actually going to be going back to Portugal and going into a project, a Mark II project that I'm going to be building there, but that's going to be at the end of this year, or maybe even start at the beginning of next year, because there's obviously going to be another project that is going to be revealed on Sunday. So yep, there's going to be a new car reveal. It's a barn find, and I think a few of you already kind of figured out what it is, but you're going to see for certain, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. So we're going over now to the other barn, so I can actually show you guys exactly what I have and what I don't have, and what I've taken off my track car. So let's go on my Wagon Racer. So let's flip the camera around so you can guys see what I've laid out here on the floor of what's actually going to Portugal. So I've kind of made two piles. So this is the pile of bits that I actually ordered that were broken on the car. That some of these actually have come off my track car, believe it or not. So the track car actually had these two-way speakers with crossovers, so I'm going to put those on the front, because on the rear I've already got those Hertz speakers, so I'll operate the system by putting these on the front ones. Also, because the car's a winter pack, it had the headlamp washers, and one of the caps were missing basically, so I've ordered a set of caps. Also, my Mark IV had the sunglass holder, which I think is quite cool. They're really quite expensive actually. I saw on eBay, they go for quite a good bit of money, these little sunglass kind of holder thingies. So yeah, I took that off the track car. Also, one of my lights on the front were broken, so I took those off my Mark IV as well. I'm going to go do something a bit different. I'm not really a fan of the US spec and this whole, the US run Euro, the Euro run US. But actually on the estate, I'm actually going to put side markers. I don't know if I'm going to wire them in, but I'll definitely put those up on the bumper as well. Also, I sourced this off eBay. It's one of these Chinese specials. Because obviously the handle was broken on the other one, as well as the clips and stuff. So I've got that, and also my one's missing. I'll spray this black because it's kind of that wood effect. But I think it actually needs to be trimmed, because obviously there may be different between left and right hand drive. But yeah, so that'll just kind of lock into there to hold it in place. And then also I sourced this original from a Bora with the parking sensors. So I got this quite cheap. I'm gonna have to kind of bring this in the car that I'm taking down, which will be revealed on Sunday. But anyway, back onto this. So yeah, so I think it's pretty cool with the parking sensors, especially on the estate. And then move over what suspension and handling wise. So this stuff all looks rusty and old, and it is kind of a bit rusty, but it's not old. It had very little use, like I've just said. And this stuff, you know, cost quite a bit at the time to source. But what I'm going to be fitting is the TT wishbones. Again, these are rusty, but they've actually got really good bushes on them, power flex and stuff. They just need a clean and to be painted up. So I'm going to put the TT wishbones, which have a different caster, as well as the bolts are elongated at the bottom there, so you can actually dial in at least 1.5 degrees of camber. The TT hubs, this is only one of them. Again, if you know your Mark IVs, this ball joint sits a lot closer to the CV joint, so it's actually pushed it further down, as well as this arm is in a slightly different position. The next thing I'm going to be fitting onto the car as well is, you know, the rear shocks. Funny enough, I find those H&Rs, they're comfortable at the front, but trying to get the height up on the rear, the shock's really short. And that kind of variable rate spring, it's fully compressed, and the car hasn't actually gone up very high, and I find it quite tough. So what I'm going to do is fit these GAZ, the kind of motorsport orientated shocks. They're very good. I've used them in loads of cars. They're adjustable, so I can actually dial it in and dial it off as in the conditions and stuff. And if I do end up doing the odd track day, that's pretty good. And I actually will probably take off the progressive springs on the back to put constant rate springs. I've got some 350 poundage ones and some 400 poundage ones, so I can kind of vary and see which works best on the car with those adjustable platforms. Also took off the vented rear brakes, the 256s, which are plug and play basically on the Mark IV platform. Also these are what I was saying to you about the subframe. I got these from 034 Motorsport, because the subframe, believe it or not, have those bushes on the rear, and the subframe does actually move around a little bit on the hard cornering and on like with you know, stiffer suspension, coilovers and stuff. So I've also sourced those. Anti-roll bar, I don't know, obviously due to the hubs and the wishbones not having the position for the anti-roll bar, In the past, I've actually welded like a little bracket on there to use the original anti-roll bar, which I may do, because otherwise I need to have that kind of mount on the shock. Those H&Rs don't actually have that. So I would like to use this anti-roll bar. It looks like a TT one. The only difference is this is actually from the Leon Krupa R. And the main difference is the Leon Krupa R is 17mm bar and the TT ones are 22 or 21, depending on the year and the model. But generally they're thicker. And the reason why this thinner one works is it actually has less understeer. So it makes the front end feel really quite darty and quite pointy, so it's quite nice. But I'll take it anyway, and then I'll decide if I'm gonna fit it or adapt something for it to fit or not, or just keep things simple and keep the H&R front anti-roll bar. And then we've got the top mounts, and these are those. These are, they're rose jointed. They're also camber adjustment if I want more camber, as well as caster, but I actually like to use these for the caster. So I kind of put it back and actually have the shock as far back into the corner as possible, so that it kind of gives it a better feel. So I don't really mess around too much with the camber, because obviously it's a road car, and the 1.5 degrees that I can more or less dial in from the wishbone is more than enough as a daily. So this little recipe of the TT wishbones, the TT hubs, those little bushes, these top mounts, and that front anti-roll bar really does actually surprisingly transform the Mark IV front end to kind of steer really quite nice actually, and be, you know, gives you a lot more feel, steering feel, a lot more stable, as well as just gives you turning. And then obviously the back, you can dial it in with the shocks and stuff, and it makes it into quite a nice platform. That's the hatch. I haven't messed around with a Wagon before. And then moving over to the last item, which was obviously that bit that was broken on the Wagon, which is almost impossible to find in Portugal. So I sourced one here. It's in good condition, but I think unfortunately in the postage it got scraped too a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of cover it up, maybe, and just spray some satin black on there just to tidy it up so it looks all, because it's a shame really, it's in really good condition. I mean, even this bit here, it's all in good nick. Even the spring on this works. So yeah, so that's cool. So I can't actually wait to get this on, because I was just drooping and stuff, and you can't really it doesn't recoil. I can tell already the difference from driving the same setup on the Smuggler's Mark IV to what's on the Wagon now, that surprisingly actually the Wagon does actually feel different. It feels, maybe because of the box section at the back, and it's kind of, you know, just more rigid on the rear. It seems to handle really quite well, actually surprisingly better than the hatch did. But obviously again, you've got the minus thing of you're carrying a lot more weight into the corners. But let's see, it's gonna be a mess around car. It's only a comedy car really. It's my daily driver, you know, hopefully to push about 220 out of it and get these front end bits on it and just have a laugh on track every so often, as well as those lovely, lovely roads. As some of you guys have seen on my Portuguese road trips, they've got some amazing roads there with not a lot of traffic. So it's a lot of fun. So it's all about the driving enjoyment in the end of the day. Well, this is it for today, guys. Please watch Sunday's video. It's going to be a reveal of an icon. It's a barn find. I was so lucky to get this. And some of the mods on it, I'm still kind of finding the mods as I'm going through it. Obviously, I've had it for a few weeks now, but the time has come for me to reveal it. So you guys will see that on Sunday. That'll be at 8 o'clock on Sunday. So please watch that. Keep safe. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. Click on that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm.